Dad, get out of that car right now. Lucas's voice exploded in my ear, filled with such desperation that my entire body froze. He's going to put you in a nursing home in another state. I saw the papers. He's going to leave you there and take all the inheritance money. Run, Dad, run. And then the call dropped. For a few seconds, everything went still. I sat there in the passenger seat, still holding the phone to my ear, even though all I could hear now was silence. The hum of the engine, the wind brushing against the window, the long empty road in front of us, all of it faded away. My eyes were locked on the dashboard, but my mind was spiraling. I slowly turned my head and looked at Raphael. He was driving calmly, both hands on the wheel, face relaxed, like nothing had just happened, that slight smile on his lips. I saw it for what it really was now, a mask. My name is Miguel. I'm 78 years old. I'm a widower, retired, and the father of 2 sons, Raphael and Lucas. What I'm about to share happened just weeks ago, and it still lives inside me like an open wound. And no matter how much it hurts, I need to tell it. Because sometimes, even your own blood will betray you. And if my story can warn just one person, then maybe it's worth reliving this. Pain. Raphael has always been the distant one. Ambitious, cold, always chasing money, control, power, nothing like Lucas. Lucas was the gentle one, the one who asked if I was eating, if I'd gone to the doctor, if the porch roof still leaked. When my wife Eleanor died, the love of my life for 42 years, Raphael barely showed up. To the funeral, said he had business commitments in Boston, promised to come visit soon. He never did. But 3 months ago, after Eleanor's distant cousin passed away and left us a significant inheritance, Raphael suddenly reappeared. He came bearing flowers, a fancy bottle of wine, hugs that felt more like ropes tightening around me. Let's reconnect. Dad, he said, life is short. I want to take you somewhere peaceful, just you and me. A trip, let's make memories. And me, old fool that I am, I believed him. I wanted to believe. I needed to. After so many months alone in that big empty house in rural Virginia, I thought maybe, just maybe, this was a chance to feel like a father again, like family again. Lucas didn't like it. When I told him, he looked tense. Are you sure? You trust Raphael? Of course I do, I replied. God, how I wish I could take those words back. That morning, Raphael picked me up early in a sleek, dark SUV. He was cheerful, too cheerful. Said we were heading west, a peaceful lodge near Flagstaff, Arizona. You'll love it, Dad. Clean air, quiet trails, nothing but nature. He insisted we keep it a surprise from Lucas. Just us first. I want to fix our bond before I bring him into it, and I agreed. I didn't see it then. I didn't want to, but halfway through the drive, the phone rang. And that voice, Lucas, panicking, yelling, begging me to run, tore the blindfold from my eyes. Suddenly, everything made sense. The phone turned face down, the GPS off. The strange way Raphael avoided small talk. The vague destination. The careful, overly polite tone. He wasn't reconnecting. He was erasing me. My chest tightened, my stomach flipped. I was breathing fast but trying not to show it. I was in a moving car, middle of nowhere, with a man who, minutes ago, I called my son and who now might be delivering me to the end of my freedom. I looked up at the road. A sign, rest area 3 miles. Maybe that was my only chance. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own child. Asterisk, if this story from an old man's heart is touching yours, please hit that like button. It truly helps the channel and shows me you care about hearing more real stories like this. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming stories I still need to tell. And if you know someone who needs to hear something like this, share it. Sometimes a simple story can change an entire day. Thank you for being here and for listening with your heart. I saw the sign again, rest area, 2 miles, and I knew I had to act, but how? I was 78 years old. I had bad knees. My mind still worked, thank God, but my body, it wasn't what it used to be. If I made a move too soon, Raphael would notice. If I waited too long, it might be too late. I faked a cough, a long one. Hey Raphael, do you mind if we stop at the next rest area? I think I need to use the restroom and stretch a bit. He glanced at me, then back at the road. Of course, Dad. You okay? That voice so calm, so rehearsed. Like a nurse talking to a patient. I nodded, forcing a smile. Just getting stiff from the ride. The minutes crawled. My eyes were locked on the horizon, watching for any sign of people, buildings, a gas station, anything. But the road was empty, stretching out like a ribbon through the desert. Not a single car in sight. Finally, we pulled into a small rest area, nothing more than a dusty parking lot, a set of public restrooms, 2 vending machines, and a faded picnic table. I opened the door slowly. My hands trembled. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I couldn't tell if Raphael was watching me closely or not. Every step toward that restroom felt like 100 pounds pressing down on me. Inside, I locked the door behind me, and I breathed. For the first time in hours, I let the fear show on my face. I looked at myself in the cracked mirror, pale, older than ever, but alert. I dug my phone out of my jacket pocket. No signal, of course. I stared at the screen for a moment, then closed my eyes and whispered, "Think, Miguel, think." Lucas had said he saw the papers. He found the documents, so it was real. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't some misunderstanding. Raphael was taking me to a facility, somewhere far from anyone I knew, somewhere where I wouldn't be able to call for help, and he'd take the money, all of it, that inheritance. The only thing I had left to maybe help my grandkids one day, or even just live the rest of my years in peace. I thought of Eleanor. What would she do? I opened the door and stepped out. Raphael was standing by the vending machine, tapping at his phone, still smiling, still pretending. I took a deep breath and walked toward him. "You all set?" he asked. "Yeah, thanks," I said. "Can I drive for a bit?" He blinked. "Surprised you? Drive? I know, I'm rusty, but I miss it. Let me take the wheel for just a little while. Stretch your legs. You've been driving for hours." He hesitated. I saw something flicker in his eyes, suspicion, control slipping. But then he handed me the keys. "Just don't kill us, okay?" he joked. We switched seats. I sat behind the wheel and adjusted the mirror. My hands were still shaking, but now I had control. I pulled out of the rest area, drove slow, waiting, watching, and then, a miracle, a gas station. Up ahead and next to it, a sheriff's cruiser, parked, engine running. I slowed the car. Raphael looked up from his phone. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I turned into the gas station, parked next to the sheriff's vehicle. Raphael's voice rose. "Dad, what the hell are you doing?" I stepped out of the car, shut the door, and walked straight toward the sheriff. My legs felt like lead, but my voice was steady. "Officer, I need your help. My name is Miguel Davis. I believe I'm being taken somewhere against my will." The sheriff looked at me, looked at Raphael, then back at me, and that's when everything truly began. The sheriff looked at me, really looked, and something in his face shifted. He wasn't young, maybe in his late 50s, gray at the temples, tan skin weathered by years of sun. A man who'd seen things. His badge said Sheriff Tom Walker, and his presence was quiet but firm. "Come with me, sir," he said gently. He opened the passenger side door of his cruiser and motioned for me to sit. "Let's talk." As I climbed in, I saw Raphael still standing by our SUV, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. He didn't yell, didn't chase after me. He just stood there, watching. Sheriff Walker slid into the driver's seat beside me and left the door open. "All right, Mr. Davis, tell me what's going on." I looked down at my hands, clasped in my lap. They were shaking. "My name is Miguel Davis. I'm 78 years old. I believe my son is trying to have me committed to a facility in another state, without my consent. I received a call about 20 minutes ago from my other son, Lucas, who told me he found forged documents, a plan to have me declared mentally incompetent so Raphael could take control of my inheritance." The sheriff raised his eyebrows but didn't interrupt. "He invited me on this trip, told me it was for bonding, healing. I thought maybe he just wanted to reconnect. But the phone call, the way he's acted, the secrecy, I'm scared. Sheriff, I think he's taking me somewhere far away so I won't be able to fight it." Sheriff Walker nodded slowly. "Do you have any proof of this?" "No, not on me. Lucas said he found the documents, but I couldn't get the call back. We were in a dead zone. But I swear to you, Sheriff, something's wrong. Something is terribly wrong." He leaned back in his seat, hands resting on the steering wheel, thinking, "That man over there," he pointed to Raphael, "is he the one driving?" "Yes, that's my son Raphael Davis." "Has he threatened you? Physically?" "Not yet. But it's not just what he said, it's what he hasn't said. The control, the pressure, the way he keeps everything vague. I know I sound paranoid, but please, I'm not crazy. I'm just scared." He looked me dead in the eye. "You don't sound crazy, Mr. Davis. You sound like a man in a situation that doesn't feel right. That's enough for me to ask questions." He stepped out of the car and walked over to Raphael. From where I sat, I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see Raphael's face changing. First confused, then defensive. He gestured with his hands, shook his head. The sheriff stayed calm, pointed at the car, said something firm. Raphael looked over at me, and in that look, I saw something snap. The charm vanished. The mask dropped, got in the SUV, and slammed the door. For a moment I thought he was going to drive away, but instead, he just sat there, hands tight on the wheel. The sheriff came back. "He says you're confused, that you've been having memory problems, that this was a wellness trip." I shook my head. "That's what he wants people to believe, that I'm slipping, that I can't handle my own affairs. He's building a case, maybe already has, to have me declared incompetent. I'm telling you, I'm not making this up." Sheriff Walker nodded again, slowly. Then he took out his phone and made a call. "Yeah, it's Tom. I've got a possible adult protection issue here. Elderly male, says his son may be trying to place him in a long-term care facility across state lines without legal consent. Says there may be forged documents involved. Requesting backup and a welfare check protocol." He looked at me after hanging up. "We're going to take you to the station, Mr. Davis. Not under arrest, just for safety. We'll contact your other son, Lucas, and get the full story." My whole body sagged in relief. "Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you. I looked back at Raphael's SUV one last time. He was still there, still waiting. But I knew this, whatever he had planned was starting to fall apart. And for the first time since I got into that car that morning, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely alone. The ride to the station was quiet. Sheriff Walker drove steady, not saying much, and I stared out the window, trying to process everything. The desert passed by like a blur. Tall brown grass, rocky hills, broken fences, but my mind was stuck on Raphael's face. That moment when he realized I knew. I kept thinking, how did we get here? I raised that boy, changed his diapers, took him fishing when he was 5, held him when he cried after his first heartbreak, I paid for his college. And now he was trying to lock me away, not because I was sick, not because I was losing my mind, but because I had something he wanted, money. We pulled into a small sheriff's office just outside Flagstaff. The sun was starting to dip behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the parking lot. The building was modest, older, with a big American flag fluttering out front, and a row of dusty patrol cars parked along the side. Sheriff Walker led me inside, offered me a chair in a private office, and handed me a glass of cold water. You just sit tight. I'm going to contact your son, the one who called you. I nodded, grateful. He left the room, and I sat there in silence. The hum of the air conditioner, the ticking of a wall clock, the faint chatter of radios in the background, it all made me feel like I was floating. Like none of this was really happening. But it was 10 minutes later. He returned with another officer, a younger woman named Deputy Collins, and a phone in his hand. I have Lucas on the line. He put it on speaker. Dad, are you okay? Hearing his voice, just hearing, it broke something in me. My throat tightened. I couldn't speak for a moment. I just closed my eyes and whispered, I'm okay now, son. I'm safe. Sheriff Walker filled him in on where I was, what had happened, and asked about the documents. Lucas didn't hesitate. I went by Raphael's place this morning to drop off something. He wasn't home, but his office door was open. I shouldn't have gone in, but I had a bad feeling. I found a file with your name on it. Inside were copies of medical records forged. I could tell they said you were suffering from advanced cognitive decline. There was a notarized power of attorney form, signed and dated last week, naming Raphael as your guardian. My stomach turned. I never signed anything, I said. I never even saw those documents. He forged your signature, Dad, I'm sure of it. Deputy Collins stepped in. Lucas, do you still have the documents? I scanned everything. They're on my computer. I can send them right now, please do. There was a pause. Then Lucas added something that made my blood run cold. There was also a brochure for a private facility in Nevada. High security, memory care. Dad, that's where he was taking you. Sheriff Walker swore under his breath. We'll open an investigation immediately. I finally found my voice again. Sheriff, what happens now? He looked me dead in the eye. First, we make sure you're safe. Then, we go after whoever did this to you. That night, I stayed in a small safe room at the station. It wasn't a jail cell, just a locked guest space with a bed, a TV, and a secure phone. Deputy Collins brought me dinner, turkey sandwich, chips, and a warm cup of tea. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time before I ate. I kept picturing Raphael behind a desk, signing those fake papers with my name, smiling to himself, planning it all like a business deal, calculated, cold. I'd seen things in life, war, death, loss, but nothing ever felt like this. Nothing ever prepared me for the betrayal of my own flesh and blood. Before bed, Lucas called again. I'm driving out to see you, Dad, first thing in the morning. You don't have to, son, I said. Yes, I do. I'm not letting him get away with this. Not after what he tried to do to you. His voice cracked a little, and for a moment, I remembered him as a boy, knees scraped from the playground, crying in my arms. Thank you, Lucas, I whispered. You saved me. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. That silence between us said everything. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Raphael's face. Not the face from my memories. Not the boy who used to hold my hand in the grocery store, or laugh at cartoons with jelly on his cheeks. No, I saw the man, in the SUV, his jaw tight, his eyes cold, planning a future that didn't include me, at least, not as a free man. That at one point, I got up and paced the small room. My knees ached, but I didn't care. My thoughts were louder than any pain. I kept asking myself, where did I go wrong? How did the boy I raised turn into this? Morning finally came. Around 8, there was a knock at the door. Deputy Collins stepped in with a soft smile. Your son Lucas is here. I stood up too fast. My vision swam for a second, but I didn't care. I followed her through the hallway, past the front desk, and there he was. Lucas, my boy. 36 now, taller than I remembered, hair a little thinner, but with the same gentle eyes. The moment our eyes met, I broke. My chest heaved, and I walked into his arms. He held me tight. I've got you, Dad, he whispered. You're safe now. I can't remember the last time I cried like that. Not silent tears, real sobs. Decades of holding it all in, of trying to be the strong one fell away in that moment. I was just a father, scared and betrayed, and I was lucky enough to have one son who still stood by me. We sat together in Sheriff Walker's office, while Lucas handed over everything: a USB drive with the scanned documents, a written timeline of what he found, screenshots of text messages Raphael had sent to a mutual friend, things like, "Once I get power of attorney, it's all mine. The old man slipping won't take much." Sheriff Walker looked through it carefully. "This is substantial," he said. "Enough to open a full investigation." Lucas nodded. "I want to press charges. Fraud, abuse, forgery, whatever applies. He tried to take away my father's life." The sheriff agreed and stepped out to begin the paperwork. I sat there, staring at my hands again. The same hands that once built our home, fixed bikes, cooked breakfast on Sunday mornings. Hands that had held both of my sons when they were born. Now one of those sons had tried to erase me. Lucas put his hand on mine. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Dad, I should have known." I shook my head. "No, son. You saw it when it mattered most. You called me. You saved me." His eyes welled up. "I almost didn't. I almost thought maybe I was overreacting. But something felt wrong." I swallowed hard. "Thank you for listening to your gut and to your heart." We spent the next few hours giving statements. A representative from Adult Protective Services came by, just to make sure I wasn't being coerced. I passed every question. I was clear, detailed, and alert. "This man is not suffering from dementia," the agent said after our meeting. "He's sharp. He's been targeted, not confused." Lucas asked if I wanted to stay in a hotel or go back to Virginia. I looked at him and said quietly, "Can I stay with you?" He didn't hesitate. "As long as you need, Dad. My home is your home." We left the station in the early afternoon. The sun was bright and sharp in the Arizona sky. As we drove to his house, a quiet neighborhood just outside Phoenix, I looked out the window and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief, not just for having escaped Raphael's plan, but for realizing I wasn't as alone as I thought. Lucas's home was warm and lived in. Photos on the walls, toys scattered from his 2 kids, my grandkids. I hadn't seen them in months. He called them into the living room. "Come say hi to Grandpa Miguel." They ran into my arms like I hadn't missed a single day. And just like that, I started to feel human again. Not broken, not discarded. Scene. Asterisk. The first night at Lucas's house was the first real sleep I'd had in days. I didn't toss and turn. I didn't wake up panicked. I didn't dream of locked doors or empty hallways or Raphael's hollow smile. I just rested. When I opened my eyes the next morning, sunlight was pouring through the window. And for a few seconds, I didn't remember where I was. Then I heard laughter, children's laughter, and it grounded me. My grandkids, Lily and Mason, were playing downstairs. Their voices, so full of life, reminded me that not everything had been taken from me. Not yet. Lucas had made coffee. Real coffee. Not the instant kind I kept at home out of laziness. "Morning, Dad," he said, handing me a mug. "Morning, son." We sat on the back porch, watching the early sun cut across the lawn. For a while, we didn't talk, just sipped our drinks, letting the silence be enough. But it didn't last. "The sheriff called me late last night," Lucas finally said. "They're officially opening a criminal case. Fraud, elder abuse, forgery. It's going to move fast." I nodded slowly. "And what about the papers?" "The power of attorney, already flagged as fraudulent. But they want you to go to a notary today, to sign a revocation officially canceling anything Raphael might have tried to push through." I looked down at my hands again. I'd been doing that a lot lately, staring at them like they were someone else's, like I couldn't believe they'd signed anything, even unknowingly. I trusted him, Lucas, I thought. I thought maybe we were healing. Lucas didn't answer, right away. "Some people see kindness as a weakness, Dad, but it's not. What Raphael did, that's weakness. That's fear, disguised as ambition." I swallowed hard. I just never thought my own son would try to erase me like I was some inconvenience. Lucas reached across and gripped my forearm. "Not an inconvenience. You're my father, and we're going to make this right." That afternoon, we drove to a local notary office. The woman behind the desk, her name was Beth, was kind, gentle, and fast. She reviewed the sheriff's report, scanned my ID, and helped me sign the official revocation of any legal authority Raphael had attempted to obtain. A copy was faxed directly to Sheriff Walker's office, another to Lucas's lawyer, a woman named Ann Whitmore. Ann was waiting for us on a video call when we returned home. She was calm, sharp, and thorough. "First things first," she said. "We're going to freeze any access Raphael has to your financial accounts. He doesn't have any passwords." I said. "That may not matter. If he's already posing as your guardian, he could be filing requests through other channels. We're locking everything down today. No more exposure." I felt a strange mix of shame and gratitude. Shame that I'd let this happen. Gratitude that someone was finally helping me stop it. Anne continued. "Next, we're updating your will. I understand you had both sons listed as equal beneficiaries." I nodded. "That changes now," I said. "I want Raphael removed from everything." Lucas glanced at me, unsure. "Dad, are you sure?" I looked him in the eye. "Son, he didn't just try to take my money. He tried to take me, my freedom, my life." That kind of betrayal? There's no going back from that. And nodded. I'll begin the new draft today. You'll sign it with 2 witnesses. We'll file it by end of week. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something solid under my feet. Control, boundaries, protection. That night, after the kids went to bed, Lucas and I sat out on the porch again. The desert air was cooler now, and the stars were just starting to appear. Do you ever think he regrets it? I asked. Lucas sighed. I think Raphael only regrets getting caught. That hit harder than I expected. I looked out at the horizon. I raised him better than this. I know I did. Lucas placed a hand on my shoulder. I know you did too. We sat in silence again. Not empty silence, full silence. The kind that holds the weight of all the things that don't need to be said aloud. I thought about all the fathers out there who might not be so lucky, who don't have a Lucas to call at the last second, who do end up locked away, forgotten, used. I closed my eyes and made myself a promise. This wouldn't be the end of my story. It didn't take long for Raphael to respond. 2 days after we signed the new will and revoked every shred of access he had, Lucas got a call from an AR lawyer. You're not going to like this, she said. I was sitting across from him, at the kitchen table, when he repeated her words. Raphael has filed a counterclaim. My stomach tightened. A counterclaim? On what grounds? He's accusing me, Lucas said, barely able to get the words out, of manipulating you, of isolating you from him. He says I forged the documents to make him look guilty. I blinked. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. Raphael, the one who tried to lock me away, was now accusing Lucas of abuse. He filed the paperwork in Boston and explained over speakerphone. That's where he lives. He's arguing that you were coerced into changing your will, that Lucas is using your age and vulnerability to influence your decisions. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. That boy, that man, he has no shame. Anne sighed. The good news is, we've already documented your capacity. You passed your APS interview. You've given multiple statements under oath, but Raphael's trying to flip the script. It's a stall tactic, but we have to take it seriously. Lucas looked devastated. I knew he'd fight back. I just didn't think he'd come for me. I walked around the room, trying to calm my breath. That's what abusers do, son. When they lose control, they try to twist the story, turn it all upside down. But we're not going to let him win. Anne laid out the next steps. We'd have to submit Miguel's psychological and medical evaluations, bring in character witnesses, present the entire timeline of Raphael's attempt, including the sheriff's report, the phone call, and the forged documents Lucas discovered. We're going to need Marina too, Anne added. Lucas raised his eyebrows. Marina? His ex. She's listed on some of the text message screenshots. If she's willing to testify, she could be the nail in the coffin. I hadn't thought about Marina in years. She and Raphael had broken up ages ago. I remembered her as smart, observant, always polite with me, even when Raphael wasn't. If she'd seen something, maybe she'd be brave enough to speak up. Lucas sent her a message that night. We waited and waited. It wasn't until the next afternoon that she replied. One line, simple. I know what he did. I'll help. Despite the progress, the stress was wearing me down. I could feel it in my bones, in my heartbeat, in the way I looked at myself in the mirror. There's a kind of tired that no nap can cure, and I was carrying it. Everywhere I went, I worried someone was watching, that Raphael had hired someone to follow me, that a letter would show up in the mail with more threats, that somehow, this wouldn't end clean. But every time I looked at Lucas, I remembered I wasn't in this alone. He was always calm, always steady, even when I WASN, single quotes T. One night. After dinner, I asked him, do you think he'll stop? Lucas took a long breath. No, not until someone forces him to. And what if that someone has to be me? He looked at me, really looked at me. Then we stand beside you. There was a power in that. Not just in his words, but in the fact that someone believed me, that someone still saw me as whole, even after all this. I wasn't ready to be discarded. I wasn't ready to be erased. I still had a voice, and I was going to use it. Asterisk. Marina arrived 2 days later. Lucas picked her up from the airport and brought her straight to the house. I hadn't seen her in years, but the moment she walked through the door, I recognized her eyes. Focused, honest, tired. She gave me a quiet hug. No small talk, no awkward formalities, just a simple embrace, like she knew exactly how heavy the air had become. We sat in the living room. Lucas handed her a cup of coffee, and for a while, none of us said anything. It was Marina who finally broke the silence. I stayed with Raphael for 4 years. She began. I left because I started to see who he really was. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I listened, every nerve in my body tight. He's not just manipulative, Mr. Davis. He's calculated, cold. Everything with him is a game of leverage. Control. He used to joke about how easy it would be to take power of attorney from an old man with shaky hands. She paused, looking at me with guilt. I didn't think he'd actually do it. I swallowed hard. None of us did. She opened her purse and pulled out an old flash drive. I made backups of everything before I moved out. Emails, messages, even recordings. I didn't know if I'd ever need them. But now, Lucas leaned forward. You recorded him. Marina nodded slowly. One night we were drinking wine. He was bragging. Said you'd never see it coming, said the man thinks. I care about his feelings. All I need is one fake evaluation, and he's gone. You have no idea how much money he's sitting on. I closed my eyes. Hearing it, not just imagining it, but hearing someone else confirm it, hit me like a punch to the chest. I'd been gaslit, lied to, played like a fool, but now, I had a witness. I had evidence. And for the first time since that car ride with Raphael, I felt the tide turning. Anne met with us on video that evening, when Lucas told her about Marina's recordings. She didn't even try to hide her relief. That's the linchpin. If the audio is clear, and we can verify the date, it completely destroys Raphael's credibility. Marina nodded. I'll testify, whatever you need. I'm not afraid of him anymore. I looked at her, truly looked at her. There was strength in her voice, not loud or angry, but grounded. She had once been part of Raphael's world, and now, she was helping tear down the very lies he built. After the call, I sat out on the porch again. The Arizona sky was deep blue, the stars beginning to poke through. The desert air smelled like earth and wind. I thought about everything we'd done in the past week. The sheriff, the lawyer, the notary, the statements, Marina's arrival, and yet it all felt like just the beginning. Because now, the fight was official. Raphael knew we were coming, and I knew he wouldn't go quietly. That night, Lucas and I ate dinner at the table with the kids. Lily climbed onto my lap and asked me to read her a story after dessert. It was a simple moment. A little girl, a bedtime book, a tired old man, but it meant everything. As she curled into my arms, I realized something. Raphael might have wanted to steal my freedom, my voice, my dignity, but what he could never touch was this, my legacy, the warmth of my granddaughter's laugh, the strength of my son's loyalty, the truth in Marina's courage. That was mine, and I wasn't going to let him erase it. Preparing to face Raphael in court felt nothing like I expected. I thought I'd feel angry, maybe even vengeful, but mostly, I just felt tired of carrying the weight of betrayal, tired of trying to understand why someone I raised could turn so cold, tired of the ache in my chest that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with heartbreak. But I also felt something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Resolve. We met with Anne again the next morning. Marina joined us in person, and the five of us, May, Lucas, Marina, Ani, and a paralegal named Jordan sat around the dining room table going over every single detail. We're going to file a motion for pretrial protection. And it explained that means Raphael won't be able to contact you directly or indirectly. No calls, no emails, no representatives. I nodded. What about public claims? What if he tries to speak to the press? Anne gave a grim smile. Then he opens himself up to defamation countersuits. Trust me, Mr. Davis. The more noise he makes, the more he exposes himself. Marina handed Anne the flash drive. It's all. Here are 2 voice recordings, 2 screenshots of text messages, 1 screen-recorded video of him laughing while reading the forged papers. Lucas clenched his jaw. He actually laughed. Like it was a joke, she said. Anne's assistant plugged the drive into her laptop. We all listened in silence as Raphael's voice filled the room. My voice didn't shake, but my hands did. He'll never know what hit him. He trusts me. It's embarrassing, honestly. And then his laugh, that cold, detached laugh echoing into the room like a knife. I closed my eyes. That's enough, I said. Anne stopped the audio and nodded. It's more than enough. That afternoon, Lucas and I drove to the courthouse to sign the final complaint papers. I wore my best shirt. He wore the same navy blazer he'd worn at his wedding. I asked him if he was nervous. Not for me, he said. Just for you. Don't be, son. I've been through worse. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true. Inside the courthouse, everything smelled like paper and polish. Cold floors, fluorescent lights, the low hum of legal conversations in every corner. As we waited in line at the clerk's office, I looked around at all the people filing paperwork, some angry, some scared, some lost, and I realized I wasn't the only one fighting to be heard, not the only one trying to prove I mattered, that I wasn't broken, that I wasn't invisible. We submitted the documents. The clerk stamped the forms. Anne's team would take it from there. It was official now. The system knew my name. Raphael couldn't erase me anymore. That night, I sat with Lucas out on the porch. The stars were clear again, and the breeze carried the smell of mesquite and dust. I spoke first. I'm not sure I'll ever understand how we got here. Lucas nodded. Some people don't change. Dad, they just get better at hiding. But I raised him and you loved him. You still do. That's the hard part. I didn't answer. Because it was true. As much as I wanted to hate Raphael, I couldn't erase the memories. The birthday parties, the scraped knees, the times he crawled into our bed after a nightmare. The first time he called me Dad? That's the cruelest part of betrayal. It doesn't come from strangers. It comes from people who once meant everything. But I also knew this. I couldn't let love be a weapon used against me. Not anymore. He had made his choice, and now, I was making mine. A week after we filed the complaint, the world around me started to shift. Not dramatically, not like in the movies, but subtly, quietly. A phone call here, a sideways glance there. People from my church back in Virginia started reaching out. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent a vague message. I heard some things. Hope you're okay. Even one of Raphael's old high school friends sent a direct message to Lucas saying, I knew something was off about him. Tell your dad, I'm praying for him. It had begun. The truth, or at least the pieces of it, were leaking out into the world, and I didn't know how to feel about that. On one hand, I wanted justice. I wanted the people who smiled at Raphael and shook his hand at family reunions to know what he tried to do. I wanted the shame to land where it belonged, on him, not on me. But there was another part of me, the part that still remembered him as a little boy, that felt sick inside. I didn't want to become a man defined by revenge. One morning, I was reading on the porch when Lucas came outside holding his phone. Someone wants to talk to you, he said carefully. You don't have to, but it's Mom's sister, Aunt Carol. I hadn't spoken to Carol since Eleanor's funeral. I took the phone with shaky hands. Carol, her voice cracked instantly. Miguel, I just wanted to say I believe you. I know my nephew. I always knew he had that coldness in him, but I never thought he'd go this far. I'm so sorry. I held the phone tightly. Thank you. That means more than you know. She was quiet for a moment, then added something that pierced deeper than I expected. What are you going to do, Miguel? If he apologizes, if he shows up one day, can you forgive him? I didn't answer her. Not then. Not because I didn't have words, but because I didn't have truth. Because the truth is, I didn't know. That question followed me like a shadow. For days, could I forgive someone who tried to bury me alive in bureaucracy and silence? Could I ever look into Raphael's eyes again, and not see the man who planned to strip me of everything? My name? My freedom? My future? And what would Eleanor want me to do? I thought of her often now, not just as my wife, but as a mother. She always believed there was good in people. She forgave faster than I did, loved harder than I knew how. If she were here, maybe she'd hold my hand and tell me that forgiveness wasn't about Raphael. It was about me, about not letting the poison take root. But Eleanor wasn't here, and the wound Raphael left hadn't even begun to scab. One night, I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself long and hard. I saw age. I saw lines carved by time and sorrow, but I also saw something else. A man who refused to be silenced. A man who still had a spine, even if his back ached. A man who still had something to protect, and nothing to prove. I spoke to my own reflection, just to hear it out loud. You're still here, and that matters. Lucas heard me from the hallway. He didn't say anything. He just stood behind me and rested a hand on my shoulder. No judgment, no pity, just presence. Court date's coming up, he said. I nodded. I'll be ready. I may never get back what Raphael stole from me. Not just documents or dignity, but time, peace. The illusion that family always protects its own. But I know this. He didn't win. He didn't erase me. And he never will, because I have a voice. And I'm going to use it in that courtroom, and beyond. And beyond. The morning of the hearing, I woke up long before the sun. I didn't sleep. I barely even blinked. The house was still. No footsteps. No cartoons playing in the next room. No coffee brewing yet. Just the sound of my own breath and the steady, cruel tick of the clock on the wall. Every second louder than the one before. Lucas knocked on my door around 6. You up? Since yesterday, I muttered. He smiled gently, but we both knew this wasn't the kind of day you joked about. He handed me a cup of coffee, and I sat down slowly at the edge of the bed, holding the mug like it was a shield. You don't have to do this alone, Dad. I know, but in my heart, I felt alone anyway. Because no matter how much support surrounded me, I was still the one walking into that courthouse with my name on the case file. I was still the one Raphael tried to vanish. I was the one who had to stand up and say, this happened to me. And that truth carried weight, more than my back had ever carried in its life. We drove to the courthouse in silence. Lucas behind the wheel, me beside him, dressed in the same gray suit I wore to Eleanor's funeral. It still fit, barely. The building looked the same as before, cold, sterile, humming with tension. But this time, Raphael would be inside too. I hadn't seen him since the day at the rest stop, not in person, not up close, and I didn't know what would happen when I did. Inside, Anne met us in the hallway. She looked sharp, professional, unfazed, the way a good attorney should look. But even she lowered her voice when she said, he brought 2 lawyers. Big firm, out of Boston. They're not here to settle. I nodded. I'm not here to settle either. When Raphael walked into that courtroom, my heart stuttered. He looked polished, confident, perfectly prepared. Designer suit, fresh haircut, not a trace of guilt on his face. And when our eyes met, nothing. No hesitation, no remorse. He sat across from me like I was a stranger, like I hadn't raised him, like I hadn't loved him. That was the hardest part. The judge was a middle-aged woman with a stern voice and kind eyes. She opened the proceedings with precision and order. Raphael's lawyers went first. They painted him as a concerned son, said he only intervened because he believed I was slipping. They claimed Lucas manipulated me, said I was too old to make complex legal decisions, that the inheritance had clouded everyone's judgment. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat still, hands folded, breathing slow. Then it was our turn. Anne stood and, with calm clarity, laid out our case. The phone call, the sheriff's report, the forged documents, the voice recordings, the testimony from Marina. It was all there. Then she said the words that would echo in my head for days. And now, Your Honor, Mr. Davis will speak for himself. I stood up. The room felt 100 feet wide, and crushingly small all at once. I walked slowly to the stand. My knees ached, my hands trembled, but my voice when I opened my mouth was steady. My name is Miguel Davis. I'm 78 years old. I may be old, I may be tired, but I'm not confused. I know what happened to me, and I know who did it. I told my story. From the invitation to the trip, to Lucas's phone call, to the rest stop, to the police, to Marina, I spoke plainly. I didn't cry, I didn't dramatize. I just spoke the truth. And when I looked up, I saw Raphael looking away. He couldn't face it for the first time. He looked small, and I felt even through all the pain, the shame, and the exhaustion, something that surprised me. Not anger, not even justice, but grief. Grief. For the son I'd lost, and for the father I'd never get to be again. Asterisk after I stepped down from the witness stand. I felt like I'd left a part of myself behind, not just words, but memories. Wounds I had tried for so long to bury. Now they were all on record, all public, all exposed under harsh fluorescent lights and the cold gaze of legal professionals. I sat back down next to Lucas and looked straight ahead, but I couldn't really see. My vision was blurry, like I was underwater. Not from tears, I hadn't cried, but from exhaustion. Emotional, spiritual exhaustion. I felt hollowed out. Then it was Raphael's turn. He stood slowly, buttoned his jacket with theatrical grace, and walked to the front like he was auditioning for a role in a courtroom drama. And then he started talking. My father has always been proud, he began. But pride doesn't protect you from decline. I noticed him forgetting names, repeating stories, signing papers without understanding them. I clenched my fists in my lap. Lie after lie. I never intended to hurt him, Raphael continued. I was only trying to ensure his safety. My brother Lucas manipulated him into rewriting the will, into turning against me. I loved my father. I still do. I could feel an intense beside me. She didn't interrupt, neither did the judge, because this was his testimony, his stage, and we had to let him perform. But hearing him say he loved me, that was the cruelest line of all, because love doesn't look like false documents. Love doesn't sound like laughter over forged papers. Love doesn't feel like fear in a moving car with no escape. The lawyers questioned me again. They asked if I took medication, if I ever forgot my keys, if I'd ever repeated myself in conversation, if I remembered the date. They weren't looking for truth, they were looking for doubt. I answered every question, slowly, clearly, carefully, but with every answer, I felt like I was being peeled open, my dignity laid bare for strangers to poke at. At one point, Raphael's attorney said, Mr. Davis, isn't it true that your own son Lucas stood to benefit if Raphael were removed from the will? I paused, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I was tired of the game. Yes, I said, but Lucas didn't ask for $1. He didn't plan to lock me away. He didn't lie to a court. He didn't try to make me disappear. Bet, shut them up for a moment. But the damage had already been done. I could feel the doubt crawling into the room. That subtle, dangerous fog that creeps into people's minds when an old man says one thing and a younger man says another. I looked over at the judge. Her face was unreadable. And suddenly I felt invisible again. That night, back at Lucas's house, I didn't speak during dinner. I barely touched my food. Lily tried to get me to read her a book again, but I couldn't. My voice wouldn't come. Lucas walked me to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. Dad, you were incredible today. Strong, honest, brave. I shook my head. I felt like a specimen on display, like a confused old man trying to prove he's still human. Lucas's voice cracked. You are human. You're more than human. You're my father. You're the reason I know what integrity is. I looked at him. Then why do I feel like I lost today? He didn't have an answer, because some losses don't come from losing a verdict. They come from standing in front of the world, ripping open your heart, and realizing no one can protect you from how it feels. I don't remember falling asleep that night. One moment I was staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows shift with the streetlights outside, and the next I was waking up with my heart pounding like I'd run a marathon in my sleep. The dream had already vanished, but the feeling lingered. Fear, loss, shame. I sat up slowly, the weight in my chest almost unbearable. I had made it this far. I had told my truth. I had stood in that courtroom and looked my son in the eyes, but I still felt defeated. Not by Raphael, by something deeper. By the terrifying thought that maybe, just maybe, none of it would matter. Because when you're old, people listen differently. They nod kindly, but they don't always believe you. They assume you're confused or nostalgic or fragile. You say the truth, and they hear memory. You say you're scared, and they hear weakness. I walked into the kitchen. It was still dark, quiet. Lucas had left a small note on the counter. Went to pick up groceries. Back soon, rest if you can. I didn't sit. I didn't eat. I stood by the window and looked out at the empty street, wondering how many other people were awake at that hour, haunted by the same kinds of questions I was. Who was I now? Not just legally, not just in the eyes of the court, but deep down, inside, A man who raised 2 sons, one who saved me, one who tried to erase me, a man who loved his wife with everything he had, and now talked to her only in the silence of memory. A man who had spent his whole life trying to do the right thing, and now found himself defending his sanity in front of strangers, and maybe worst of all, a man who didn't know if he'd ever feel whole again. Later that morning, I went to sit on the porch. The sun was coming up, painting the sky with pink and gold. It was beautiful, quiet, peaceful, but it felt like it belonged to someone else. I closed my eyes and thought of Eleanor. "You'd know what to do," I whispered. I imagined her voice, soft, calm, certain, but I couldn't hear the words. Not. This time not. My throat tightened. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop from crying. Not out of pride, but because I was afraid that if I started, I wouldn't stop. Lucas came home a little after 8. He saw me through the screen door and came outside, grocery bags still in his hands. "You okay?" I nodded. Lied. "Just tired." He sat beside me and didn't say anything for a while. That was something I always admired in him, his ability to just be there, without trying to fix everything. "I saw an old photo this morning," he finally said. "You, me, and Raphael fishing at Lake James. I was 6. You were laughing." He was holding a sandwich bigger than his face. I smiled weakly. "That was a good day. You were a good dad." "You know?" I didn't answer right away. "Then why does it feel like I failed?" He looked at me, eyes full of something fierce and sad. "At the same time, you didn't fail." "He did. You raised us the same way." He made his choice. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to, but the weight in my chest wouldn't let go. "I'm scared, Lucas," I said finally. "Not just of losing this case, but of what comes after. Of waking up every day knowing my own son tried to discard me like I was nothing." Lucas reached out and took my hand. "You are not nothing, and we're not done yet." I nodded, but deep down, I felt the cracks spreading, because this wasn't just about Raphael anymore. It was about what it meant to grow old in a world that forgets people like me, that pushes us to the side, that listens when we're convenient and doubts when we're not. And as the sun rose higher in the sky, warming the porch and our skin, I whispered a question that had been hiding in the darkest part of my soul. What if no one ever really sees me again? Lucas didn't have an answer, but his silence. It held me together just a little longer. The day after the hearing, I stayed in bed longer than usual. I didn't want to move, didn't want to eat, didn't want to talk. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, the shadows dancing across, it feeling like I'd been emptied out, like everything that once filled me, hope, strength, belief, had drained through the cracks in my chest and vanished into the mattress beneath me. I could hear life happening outside the bedroom. Lucas getting the kids ready for school, dishes clinking, the distant sound of a cartoon playing in the background. But I wasn't part of it. Not really. I was just occupying space. Eventually, Lucas came in, sat on the edge of the bed. "You didn't eat breakfast," he said softly. I nodded. He didn't ask questions, just sat there. After a while, I finally spoke. "Do you think people just disappear, Lucas?" He turned toward me. "What do you mean?" I struggled for the right words. "I mean, do you think a person can be alive, breathing, walking, talking, and still be gone? Not because they died, but because no one really sees them anymore." Lucas didn't speak, not right away, so I continued. "That's how I feel, like I'm fading, like I've become a burden, like the world would be easier if I just stopped needing anything." He shook his head. "Don't say that, but it's true, isn't it? Look at what happened. One of my sons tried to erase me, and the other one, the one who saved me, still has to carry me through all of this. I feel like I'm stealing your time, your energy, like I'm just taking up space that doesn't belong to me anymore." Lucas's eyes filled with tears. "You're my father. You built my world. If anything, I'm just trying to hold it together for you now." I looked away. "I don't even know who I am anymore, Lucas. I feel like a man someone else used to be. Like my name is still mine, but everything else has been worn down." He leaned forward, hands clasped. "You're not broken, Dad. You're hurt. There's a difference." I heard the words, but I wasn't sure I believed them. That afternoon, Anne called. "The judge is requesting one more review before ruling. Psychological, medical. She wants to be absolutely sure you're of sound mind before dismissing Raphael's motion." I closed my eyes. Of course she does. Of course. After everything I said, everything I gave, they still want proof that I'm not just some fragile old man telling fairy tales. It felt like a final blow, a last stab at my dignity. Lucas offered to go with me to the appointment. I declined. "I need to walk in there by myself," I told him. "I need to prove, even if it's just to me, that I can still stand on my own 2 feet. He hesitated, then nodded, so I put on my shoes, buttoned my shirt, combed my hair, and I walked 3 blocks to the clinic. Sun in my eyes, knees aching, hands shaking just slightly. People passed me on the sidewalk. Young, rushed, focused. Not one of them looked at me, not one glance, not even a nod. That was the worst part. Not the hearing, not Raphael's lies, not the documents or the courtroom. The worst part was being invisible. The clinic was cold and sterile. The receptionist barely looked up when I signed in. The nurse didn't make eye contact when she took my vitals. The doctor asked questions from behind a clipboard without once asking how I was feeling. I passed every test, answered every question, proved again that I was still here. But when I walked out of that room, I didn't feel victorious. I felt small, ashamed, tired of having to prove my worth, just because I've lived long enough to be questioned. I stood on the sidewalk after the appointment and looked up at the sky, blue and wide and full of light, and for a moment, just one moment, I asked myself something I never thought I'd ask. What if Raphael was right? What if I really am better? Off, out of the way. I shook the thought off as fast as it came, but it left a scar. Because when someone you love tells you that your life is no longer yours, you start to believe it, even if just for a second. The court decision came on a Monday morning. Lucas and I sat in the living room, the blinds half open, sunlight spilling across the floor like it had something important to say. I hadn't touched my coffee. I couldn't. My hands were steady, but my chest felt like it was made of glass. Anne called. She didn't need many words. We won, Miguel. It's over. The judge ruled fully in your favor. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like weeks. The weight that had been crushing my ribs lifted. No more reviews, no more doubt, no more questioning my sanity in rooms full of strangers. The ruling was clear. Miguel Davis was of sound mind. The power of attorney Raphael filed was null and void. The accusations against Lucas were baseless and formally dismissed. The forged documents were entered into a separate criminal case, one that would now be handled by the district attorney's office. And Raphael, he disappeared. Didn't show up for the final ruling. Didn't call, didn't write. Just vanished. Like the truth had finally cornered him, and all he could do was run. I should have felt victorious, but that's not the word I'd use. What I felt was free, not in the dramatic sense. I didn't dance. I didn't shout. I just sat on that porch that afternoon, with a fresh cup of coffee and the Arizona wind brushing across my skin, and I felt present, like I had returned to myself. Like I could finally stop proving I existed. Lucas came out and sat next to me. He didn't say anything. He just handed me an envelope. Inside was a printed photo. Me and Lily, the day after the hearing, reading a book in her room. I hadn't even noticed anyone had taken it, but there we were, her curled in my lap, eyes bright, me mid-sentence, hands holding the book steady. That's who you are, Lucas said. I nodded. Not a case number, not a dependent, not a burden, just a grandfather, I replied. Just me. I've learned something through all of this. Getting older doesn't make you invisible, but people will treat you like you are unless you remind them. And sometimes, the ones who should protect you the most don't. But that doesn't mean you fold. It doesn't mean you give in. It means you speak. Even when your voice shakes. Even when the room doubts you. Even when it costs you love you thought would last forever. Because some things are more important than comfort. More important than blood. Things like dignity, memory, truth. Things like standing tall when someone tries to shrink you down into silence. I lost a son in all of this. That's the part I still carry like a bruise that won't fade. But I found something else. My voice. My right to be heard. And the proof that the people who truly love you show up. Every time. Now I live with Lucas and the kids. I help with homework. I take short walks. I cook when my hands cooperate. And sometimes, when the house is quiet, and my bones ache, and my chest still feels heavy, I talk to Eleanor, and I tell her, I'm still here, and I didn't let him take me. Now, I want to ask you something. Did I do the right thing? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. I'm listening. Always.